What is going on, YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the third album by rap rock band Crazy Town. Basically, this project is called the Brimstone Sluggers, and it came out in the summer of 2015. Now, this is their first album in a while, particularly after Crazy Town's second album, Dark Horse, from 2002. It took them about almost 15 years to finally put out this particular project, but it is a pretty solid one, I'd have to say. Definitely enjoyed this one quite a bit. It's up there with like the normal kind of Crazy Town lore, I'd have to say. They really haven't dropped a bad album. It just depends upon your flagrants for like new metal as far as that pitch kind of happens. I definitely felt like the Gifted Game was a pretty highlighted one with a bunch of singles on there. Dark Horse was a surprise hit, despite the fact that they took a break because of that album. It was still a pretty rock solid album. I reviewed that back in September, and I reviewed the Gifted Game in 2016, so you can find both of those on this channel. But this is the last one as far as that particular pitch kind of happens from Crazy Town. But this is the most recent Crazy Town project, I'd have to say. But they also do have like a bonus album, at least Shifty Shell Shock does. Back in January of 2023, I reviewed Shifty Shell Shock's. Back in January of 2023, I reviewed Shifty Shell Shock's debut album, which was Happy Love Sick. That's a pretty excellent album, I'd have to say. Really thoroughly enjoyed that particular project. So there's a good 4 projects you can definitely check out, like the Crazy Town playlist, because there is a playlist on on my YouTube channel that you can find to have all the Crazy Town stuff that you would want. So it's a good concept about it. But yeah, this is a pretty rock solid album here. Definitely a rave. This is going to get a pretty rave score. This is like a mid 2010s rendition of what new metal was up to around this particular time, and it just expands upon it and really has like a driving factor behind it in a pretty violent kind of sense, I'd have to say. Not violent in terms of like actual violence, but just in terms of quality. It's just violently good in terms of just like the sheer kind of testosterone and this poundiness that this album particularly kind of has. I mean, it's called Crazy Town for a reason. It's just the concept of this is pretty eviscerating. There's some overall quality that hits pretty rock solid. It's pretty damn near close to getting like a 10 out of 10. This kind of misses it by like a small amount, but I would still have to say this album score is nothing to sneeze at. This is definitely a pretty rock solid one, and definitely a good album, and definitely a good album to add to like Crazy Town's legacy, I would have to suppose. This is just continued quality, I'd have to say. And like I was saying before, I don't think they really had a bad album, so it's a pretty good pitch to kind of get that. But there's definitely some good stuff. This 2010s rendition of new metal, as far as that pitch kind of happens. I mean, obviously by this point, I wouldn't have expected them to have had a follow up to like Butterfly or something like that, or even Revolving Door. But they do have some hits on here. They do have 4 singles, and they did at least attempt to get some chart appeal. It's just the fact that they were removed from like their chart days. But I still would have to say, the thing about Butterfly was just the fact that that was just kind of a flash in the pan, but it's not to really have their career be seen as like one hit wonders, because they did have some hit singles like Lollipop Porn and Dark Side off of. They did have some other singles like Lollipop Porn and Dark Side and Revolving Door off the Gifted Game that did a lot of damage. I would have to say back in 1999, 2000, 2001. It's just the fact that the fact that they got more ignored than they probably should have. America in particular didn't really give Crazy Town much of a chance, which is too bad, because they've always been like low key kind of folks as far as that kind of particularly kind of went, just kind of more in like the new metal sludge as far as that particularly kind of happened. But they've always had quality albums and singles, I'd have to say. So it's a good concept. But we'll go ahead and talk about some of these singles here. Yeah, there were 4 of them. The first single was Megatron. So the first single is Megatron. This is basically like some feisty kind of summer new metal heat, I'd have to say. It's a good barbecue and outing fun that this song kind of particularly kind of has, and it's just some edgy kind of reincarnated rap rock vibes that this song particularly kind of gives. It's a very snappy type one, just really kind of pasted in your face type stuff. Not quite as just like summer festivities as Butterfly or something like that. Also has a little bit more feistiness than Revolving Door, but I would have to say it's just a pretty good pounding rap rock type one that just takes it back to like 1999, 2000, just with a more edgy kind of sense, and just kind of with a more edgy sense and crafted to like 2010s radio as far as that particularly kind of happens. But it's a pretty hit single. Definitely like the vibe of this particular one. It's just a good rap rock, just a real good single for like the rock charts as far as that particularly kind of happens. Just a good stretcher for like June, July, something like that. This early midsummer, some of those type pitches when it's like 85, 95 degrees out, something like that. Just real nice, feisty kind of one. Backpack was the second single. This is definitely a pretty nice one also. This is like a brewing kind of surging alternative metal fun of a song, I'd have to say. It's some great simmering kind of summer times, I would definitely feel like, and it's kind of mellower, but it's still a pretty sharp song, I'd have to suppose. So this one's not quite as feisty as like Megatron is, but it still is kind of like a surging kind of one. I don't know, it has more energy than Revolving Door did off of the Gifted Game, but I would still have to say it's just kind of an interesting vibe about it, because in terms of the feistiness, I'd probably say that the energy of this particular song is like a 6.5, 7 out of 10, but it's a brewing type song. Definitely has some summer festivities about it, but it's just not quite the hottest song on the album. I definitely feel like there's some songs on here like particularly like Lemon Face and some of those type ones in My Place and some of those type ones I would definitely have to say that have a lot more riveting type energy. Megatron obviously, but this is just kind of like a brewing type one that hits pretty heavily, I'd have to suppose. Born to Raise Hell is a pretty nice one. This is the third single. Born to Raise Hell is a pretty nice one. This is the third single. This is like an outrageous kind of stadium tune. I'd have to say it's got a high. This is like a high octane rumbler. I'd have to say, and it's just some out and about in summer blaze kind of times. I would definitely feel like so. This is definitely one just for being at like a summer concert, something like that. Just a real kind of outdoor festival, something of summer activities, just somewhere in the outdoor breeze. And this is just kind of summer festivities, somewhere in the outdoor breeze, things like that. Just kind of June, July heat, August type heat, that sort of stuff. As far as that pitch kind of happens, it's a really nice stadium type one for waving your lighters in the skies. It's really kind of like I would almost say like a power ballad, but not quite. This is more like those tunes that like Disturbed kind of cranks out for like the summer stadium type stuff. As far as that kind of happens, it's a real nice kind of larger, more larger festivities type pitch. As far as that would kind of happen, a little bit more megaton than Megatron is, but it's also not quite. It's also more riveting and energized than Backpack, I'd have to say. So it's a good concept to kind of get that. Come Inside, the fourth single, is a pretty nice one. This takes it back to like the electro kind of hit vibes of like Dark Horse and some of the ones off of Gifted Game and some of the electronic ones off the Gifted Game like Dark Side and Lollipop Porn as far as that particular pitch kind of has. But this is basically like a glitzy kind of electro dance hopper, I'd have to say. Once again, it's similar to Dark Side. Once again, it's similar to Dark Side off the Gifted Game. This is just a good jazzy bop. I would definitely have to feel like, and it's just vintage 90s kind of crazy town. So this is definitely one that has a lot of high octane kind of energy on here. This is a pretty crazy and rave and ritzy type one. I would definitely have to suppose. Really like the glitziness, really like the glitziness and the glamorousness of this particular song. It's definitely a pretty one. Really reminds me of Lollipop Porn and Dark Side, I would have to suppose. It's really some good pitches to kind of get that. I'm glad that they brought some of those vibes back. Now, I don't actually own like the Dark Horse album. Now, I don't actually own the Dark Horse album from 2002, so I don't remember that one quite as much. It's been since mid-late September since I reviewed that one, but I would have to say the Dark Horse album kind of felt more of like alternative metal from like the early 2000s as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of having. That one just felt more crafted to like rock radio, but some of these kind of feel like more of like electronic and more rock type sense, just in like a more standard pitch. These kind of take it more back to like rap rock as far as that kind of happens. Definitely remember from like the singles off of Dark Horse, them just kind of being more of like stuff for like post grunge type fare and just like malaise kind of alternative metal. But some of these, like Come Inside, is definitely a pretty glitzy one. Come Inside is definitely a pretty glitzy one, and like Megatron and Backpack are definitely some feisty kind of summer type ones as far as just like rap rock radio kind of goes. And then Born to Raise Hell is like a stadium type number. So it's just some good pitches to kind of get. But this is definitely more new metal bound, I'd have to say. But that's basically the album as far as like the singles kind of go. So we'll go ahead and talk about the rest of this particular project here. This album does have some good guests on here, so it has a little bit of a bigger budget this time. Tom Dumont of like No Doubt, the guitarist of No Doubt, is particularly on this song, Ashes, and it's a pretty good song to kind of get off that particular one. Bishop Lamont, who was signed to Dr. Dre's label at one point, is on here, and then Mad Child, who I've heard about. I don't know them full blown, but I've heard somewhat about them, is on here. So some good stuff to kind of get. There's some other folks, some good hook artists on here. Just has a lot more of a budget. I'd have to say some good concepts to kind of get. But we'll go ahead and recommend the songs on here. So there's 12 or 13 songs on here. I'm reviewing the Spotify edition that had up to song 13, which is the Megatron alternative version. So I'd have to say about that. Basically, the songs I recommend out of 13 would be 9.5. So there's really only 3 songs I don't recommend. There's the Almost song is a little more time, so it would basically almost be 10 songs out of 13. But I don't recommend the Megatron alternate version, but we'll go ahead and recommend these. So the 9.5 songs I recommend would be Megatron, Backpack, Born to Raise Hell, Come Inside, Ashes, Lemon Face, Baby You Don't Know, My Place, Light the Way, and the Almost song is a little more time. So I would have to say basically about some of these, a little more time is a pretty nice one for the most part. I'd have to say this is like a malaise kind of struggle song and like a pop rock kind of electro sense, I'd have to say. A Little More Time is like a malaise kind of struggle song and like a pop rock kind of electro sense, I'd have to say. It's got some mini dance vibes with like a message about it. So this is like a good contemporary type song, I'd have to say. It's got a good decent amount of dance vibe about it. It has a good pitch as far as that electro kind of sense kind of happens. This is kind of one that I was expecting from like Hollywood Undead or something like that. It's kind of like a miniature kind of affluence, similar vibes to like Hollywood Undead, considering that Hollywood Undead was one of the few rap rock bands. Considering that Hollywood Undead was one of the few rap rock bands to kind of continue new metal throughout the mid-late 2010s and like the early 2010s and stuff like that, I'd have to say. So it's a good pitch. It has some real similar vibes to Hollywood Undead, a little more time kind of does. It's just a song with a message, a little bit more malaise type feeling that this kind of has. A little bit about the struggle, just kind of missing things and not, just kind of missing things and the anguish of some of that particular concept as far as that kind of happens, just within the sense of that. and this kind of it's a good one for the most part, but I just am kind of on the fence about it. I kind of like some of this malaise, but it's just kind of it's somewhat upbeat, and I kind of am here and there about it. I kind of feel like that it's just kind of a little more time. Just kind of feels like a commercial breakout type song that I'm kind of on the fence about. It's just kind of here and there. I do like this song more than a little bit, but it's just one I don't know how oftenly I would kind of full blown listen to it, but it is a nice one. And then to talk about some of these other ones, like Ashes is a pretty nice one. Like I was saying, this has Tom Dumont of No Doubt on there. He's the guitarist on No Doubt, so this is a pretty nice one. This is like a great kind of hazy. This song is like a great hazy evening commerce of a song. I'd have to say it has. This song has late '90s No Doubt feel about it. I would definitely have to suppose, and it's just a good vanilla rock makeshift boiler. And this song is just a good vanilla rock makeshift boiler, I would have to say. So it's just a nice one. This really reminds me of No Doubt from like the Return to Saturn days and Tragic Kingdom days. I would definitely have to suppose it's a real kind of malaise type one. This is great for some evening fare. I would definitely feel like something that ska bands like Smash Mouth or just ska bands like Smash Mouth or No Doubt, some folks like that just out of late '90s fare would definitely feel like just within that pitch. Pretty good concept to kind of get that. Lemon Face is a pretty highlighted one. This is like a riled up, kind of crazed rave club kind of fun, I would have to say. It's just a fierce, kind of high octane carnage of a song, I would definitely feel like. And it's one of the album's best outing songs, I would definitely have to say. So this is a pretty. So Lemon Face is just an overall pretty carnivorous and crazed type one, just to kind of get in like a pretty overall quality pitch, I would have to suppose. It's up there with Come Inside and Megatron in terms of some of the most ferocious type songs off this particular album. And then My Place is a pretty highlighted one in that sense also. But this is definitely Crazy Town. I like their vintage kind of 90s vibes, just in terms of some of that more kind of snappy, just rave type feels that just had a lot of just energy and just overall exhilaratingness about it. So this is definitely a pretty highlighted one to kind of have for like some house parties and nightclub type fare as far as that pitch kind of happens. Definitely a good weekend number. Baby You Don't Know is a pretty nice one. This is kind of another malaise one, kind of similar to Ashes and a little more. This is kind of a malaise one similar to Ashes and a little more time. This is probably the better one compared to a little more time. I would definitely feel like really like the pacing of this particular one and the production on this one. This is like a stellar kind of evening malaise, I would have to say. It's great for day after hours wind down, I would definitely feel like, and it's pretty similar to Ashes, like I was saying. So it's just a good contexted kind of one. It's just a good contexted one to kind of get. Definitely the songwriting on this particular album is a lot more malaise. It has like the energy and kind of more relaxation type charm of like songs like Revolving Door, just a little bit more maturity just as far as this particular album kind of goes. They're not quite as much in the full-blown sunlight and spotlight. They definitely have some crazy songs, but they have reflection and introspection on this album down pretty well as also. So it's a good kind of pitch to get that. But these songs are just, it just kind of switches between like 2 o'clock p.m. kind of house party, summer party type partiness. And this album just kind of switches between 2 o'clock p.m. like house party, summer rave type partiness to like, and in some cases like some nightclub senses, but then kind of like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock p.m. like wind down type tunes. So they do have some of those pitches as far as this album particularly kind of goes. Songs like Baby You Don't Know, Ashes, and A Little More Time have that particular pitch. And then there's some songs like Megatron and Lemon Face and Come Inside and some of those type ones in My Place. And speaking of My Place, this is definitely kind of a highlighted one, I would have to say. This is like a snappy kind of mid-pace electro dance hit. I would definitely feel like it's just a quality low-key vibe that this song particularly kind of gives. And it just has like some backstreets kind of commerce about it. This kind of one that's not quite as commercial, like I would say like a little more time. This one's not quite as commercial as songs like A Little More Time, but I would have to say this has like really that backstreets kind of feel. This is something that's like typical of My Place. Just has that typical kind of backstreets commerce that Crazy Town was known for back in the late '90s, early 2000s, as far as that pitch kind of happens. Just more low-key type affairs that this song particularly kind of has. And that's the sort of Crazy Town that's also good. I mean, I like them on commercial songs like Revolving Door and Butterfly, but I also like them on songs like this. This is just a great kind of house party song. So another thing about My Place is this is a great kind of house party song. I would definitely have to feel like this is a great one to kind of have. This is just a dope hit, and I just feel like this is a great kind of house party, just kind of electro bounce, kind of a mini dance song. That's a little bit more energy, not quite as much as Lemon Face and like Come Inside and some of those type ones, but definitely a good pitch to kind of have just within that aspect. Just a good house party kind of one to get, but it's also good for just outings in general, I'd have to say. It's just some nice ones. And then Light the Way is another highlighted one. Definitely like this one. This is like a litty kind of night flash of a song, I'd have to say. Is this song is some quality pizzazz for like some late commerce. I would definitely feel like it's just a jazzy kind of nightclub and also some city hopping type song, I'd have to say. So this is just one. This is another kind of glitzy one. I kind of forgot about this song to talk about this one a little bit, but this is like another highlighted one that just kind of works Definite good for city hopping just within the sense of just kind of, I mean, this one kind of feels like some song. Light the Way just kind of feels like lollipop porn, just kind of an on the town type traverse as far as that kind of happens, whether it's just in a vehicle or just city hopping. Light the Way just has some appeal, whether it's in a vehicle through traverse or just city hopping on foot. I would have to say it's just some vivid appeal that just works pretty well. So a lot of this album just has like a lot of good, so like a lot of this album just has some good night outing kind of vibes and just overall festivities about its typical kind of crazy town as far as that pitch kind of happens. They're just pretty social and they're pretty social and outing wise. And I like the fact that it kind of has that low key kind of sense. They don't overly try to go for commercial this time. They really, for the most part, aren't trying to get like another Butterfly or something like that, or even something as large as like Revolving Door was in Europe and some of that type pitch. But I would just have to say the songs on here are pretty good. They do have some rock charts type ones. They do have some electronic type charts. They do have some electronic type songs on here. They do have some dance club type songs. They do have like some nightlife and some evening kind of malaise, some makeshift kind of songs just within that sense. There's a good assortment of kind of songs that kind of happen on here. So the album, so in terms of what I'm going to score this album, I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a 9 out of 10. It's just that rock solid, I'd have to say. Really, the only almost song on here is just A Little More Time, which I'd have to say that's just a song I was kind of on the fence about. I mean, for the most part, it delivers. I'm just kind of quizzical as to how much I truly listen to it. It's the only real song with the message I didn't enjoy full blown, I'd have to say, but it's just kind of the concept. I just look after it. Basically, this is a 9 out of 10 album. Basically, talk about the 3 songs I didn't recommend on here, which would just be The Keys, West Coast, and then Megatron alternate version. Basically, Megatron alternate version just didn't really enhance the original Megatron song that much. It was just a poor kind of remix version of that just didn't really do much for it. It was just the same type song, just a little bit electronic mixed in. Just didn't really, it was trying to be like a more rave and stadium type number of that particular type song, but just didn't really pull it off that well at all. I would slash the score for it, but I just kind of feel like it's just the same song just with like a remix kind of version. So I just will consider it just like a song. I'm just not gonna really match the score for it, but it's not one I recommend. And then West Coast pretty much had like the worst. And then West Coast pretty much had like the worst beat on this particular album. It's just trying to be like a chugging and chumming along kind of mundane type song that just didn't really pull it off that well at all. It was just a real kind of poor. It was just a real kind of poor type production that just didn't really pull off the vibe at all as far as that pitch kind of happened. And then basically The Keys is just another poor type one. I mean, it's too bad that the Mad Child song didn't do better, I'd have to say, but I just kind of look after it. I just really didn't like the productions arrange. Just really didn't like the production arrangements of The Keys. It was just one of the few beats on the entire album that just didn't really vibe with as a whole as far as that pitch kind of happened. This one. The Keys was trying to be like a crazier type tune, but it just didn't really pull it off that well just within that pitch. I felt like it probably needed a more riveting type energy like Lemon Face or something like. I feel like it probably needed a more riveting type energy like Lemon Face or My Place or Come Inside or one of those type ones just within the pitch of trying to get that one. But it's just, those are 2 minor knocks. Those are just 2 minor slags off the album, I'd have to say. So basically, yeah, this album gets a 9 out of 10. The social score, I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a 10 out of 10 because I just feel like it delivers on all fronts for the most part. The social score of this album, I'm going to go ahead and give like a 10 out of 10 because it basically delivers on all fronts. Has plenty of good riled up type hits to kind of get on here. Has definitely some electro kind of dance hits, I would have to suppose. Has some commercial type tunes. Has some songs just for like the rock radio and stuff like that. Just some kind of riveting and barbecue type summer heat as far as that kind of goes. It even has some stadium numbers on here. Just a good amalgamation of a pitch it's just a good amalgamation of a pitch as to how new metal kind of evolved way out in 2015 as far as that pitch kind of happens. So this is definitely a good follow-up to how new metal should be in these times as far as that particular pitch kind of happens. This is definitely pretty much damn near a classic new metal album in recent times, I'd have to suppose. This is definitely a pretty damn near classic new metal album in recent times, I'd have to suppose. Definitely did a lot of things right in that sort of fold. So it's a good one for that sort of sense. So in terms of the future, that's difficult because this is Crazy Town's most recent album as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of has. But I would have to say this is a good legacy for Crazy Town as far as that kind of has. Basically 4 hit albums, including the Shifty Shell Shock album. So there's definitely some good stuff to kind of get here. I would recommend checking out the Crazy Town playlist to see all this stuff and the reviews that have been done. Definitely some good pitch stuff to kind of have here. And this is an album you don't want to miss out on. I highly recommend it.